This is City Focus, the podcast from the League of Oregon Cities, where we explore the issues that matter to cities across Oregon.
The City of Mosier's motto is small enough to make a difference, and like many other small cities in Oregon, they have faced their fair share of trials in recent years, often rising to the challenge in unique ways. In this episode, Mosier Mayor Arlene Burns joins me for a conversation about her city, her intriguing personal history, and the test Mosier residents faced in 2016 when a westbound Union Pacific train derailed, causing immense environmental and economic damage. Mayor Burns, welcome to City Focus.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's really good to have you. I've been doing a series interviewing mayors from smaller towns kind of outside the metro area to give a voice to the rest of Oregon because it's a big state, lots of diversity, and I definitely wanted to have you on. I know you're one of our newest board members, the LOC board members, which is great. Before we jump into certain issues and things that are going on, tell us a little bit about who you are and how long you've been mayor and what's kind of the cool, great things about the city that you love.
Okay, who I am. Let's see. I'm originally from South Carolina. I studied geology in university, and then I left the States right after I graduated and really was gone for 13 years overseas. I was in New Zealand a few years and then based in Kathmandu, Nepal for 10 years. And I was a guide, a river guide, and a mountain guide, and a photographer and filmmaker. Yeah, so then I came back to the States in 1993, and just by dumb chance, I was hired on a Hollywood film called The River Wild to be Meryl Streep's role model, coach, trainer, and stunt double for this duration of this film. And that's what bought my house in Mosier in 1994. I've been working in film as sort of my profession ever since, and I actually ran a few film festivals, one in Telluride called Mountain Film, and another that was ocean-based in Monterey called the Blue Ocean Film Festival. So when I came back to Mosier after being gone for a while in 2012 or so, I think it's pretty natural to get involved in the city government, and probably because I'd been directing these film festivals, I was used to a lot of moving parts and putting things together. And so I think I've used my skills as a guide and a film festival director in the city government. And maybe I have a little bit of a different approach because I'm used to things happening quickly. So first I was on city council, and then I was council president, I think because I missed a meeting. And then by default, I was in charge whenever our mayor wasn't available. So I was sort of naturally the next one in line when she was ready to retire. So I became mayor. I'm on my fourth term now. So I'm 6.5 years in as mayor, but I was only a year and a half mayor here in Mosier when we had our train derailment, Union Pacific, with that put us on the map pretty much all over the United States because we were dealing with a pretty major crisis.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Your history is fascinating, and I mean that gives you such a unique perspective. But I recall when that happened. Let's talk a little bit about how you dealt with that, it being sort of new to it, because you're right, it did put you on the map. It made national news.
Yes. Well, one of the things that was interesting was it created, even though we didn't lose any people or any structures, we lost a lot of beautiful mature trees. But it put a lot of stress on our town, and there was a lot of carnage internally in the town, like a lot of turnover in the people that were involved and in charge. Our fire chief was no longer there shortly thereafter. Our school principal was no longer there. Our city attorney was no longer there. Our city manager. So, when these things happen, especially in a town as small as Mosier, and it was such a national event and crisis, it's tough on towns. So we made a choice pretty early on in the process to, instead of taking a litigious approach with the railroad, who is our neighbor, whether we like it or not, to try to find a way to come to a settlement that was based on mutual understanding and outside of court. And so we created an IGA with the city, the fire district, and the school. And for almost 2 years, we had this negotiation with the railroad and came to a settlement an agreement that I think is pretty much a landmark thing, first of all, of this approach of let's find out how we can work through this together instead of fight each other and everyone loses. So we, through that settlement, were given 4.5 acres of land. That's right, prime land right in our city limits that we had been leasing from the railroad for 30 years, but we weren't able to put any infrastructure on it. And so that was a huge thing for us. So that enabled us to develop that whole part of our town. And then the other thing was we got money from the railroad specifically for our sort of community vision of building a new fire hall, city hall, and community center. And then we got some money from the state initially. And now we're at 57% funding, not that long after this crash, for a 10,000 square foot state-of-the-art net zero building, meaning it will produce as much energy as it uses. And so we're trying to be a template and, to make lemonade out of the lemons. This crash happened and it caused disruption, but how can we come to the other side of it in an energetic sort of transition? And I think that's what's happened in Mosier. And I think the key to that has been good partnerships with the state agencies, with ODOT, with our county, with our partners, and our fire district especially. We're in mutual aid, so we are helping with fires in Hood River County. A couple of weeks ago, our Mosier Fire Department was defending the Google data center in the Dalles.
Oh, wow.
So, even though we're tiny, we're reaching way beyond. And of course, we're responding to events that happen on I-84 on the freeway that have nothing to do with the residents of our town. And that's why I think we can justify that our town needs some of this state and larger support to have the infrastructure we need. Also for the tourists that come through. And after the Eagle Creek fire that devastated the gorge, a lot of the tourism was pushed east towards us. So, we are now in line. We've got funding from the Oregon Department of State, ORDP. I always can't get all the acronyms.
There's a lot of them.
Public restrooms downtown that we've never had public restrooms in Mosier, which is crazy. So we can maybe soon get rid of our porta potties, which will be my legacy if that's the legacy of my, of my mayorship. And also we're building a plaza that we have fully funded that will also honor the 4 treaty tribes that are sort of in the fabric of everything we do here. And then we just got word that we got $750,000 from the state in this last legislative round. And our other big project that is kind of a result of the crash is, our wastewater treatment plant has direct outfall into the Columbia River right where our recreation site is, which is not ideal. And, the water is at to code a cleanliness that's acceptable. You can still smell it out there. And it's right where all the little children and dogs and the wind participants are recreating. So we're going to take a big, sharp right turn and make a tertiary treatment with our wastewater treatment and eliminate direct discharge into the Columbia River. And we just got, I think it's not totally approved of yet, but I think we will get from this American Rescue Plan dollars. We fit right into that wastewater infrastructure on that. So we've just asked for, and at least by the legislature have been approved for $2.5 million for that. So this is all big news. A lot's happening here in Mosier.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, small city, but my gosh, there's a lot going on in your city and a lot of really interesting outside the box, creative things going on in your city.
Another thing, we just have worked with our public utility, which here is Pacific Power. And we applied first for a technical grant because we didn't have the capacity ourselves to know how much we needed to know technically. And we got a grant for $215,000 to put in 2 high-speed EV chargers and this will be adjacent to the building and the restrooms. So that funding is in place, and we're going to break ground on that this year, I believe. So yeah, it's a transformation happening. And I do think a lot of it is due to having these good relationships with our representatives, with the governor's office, and with the various state agencies that I think want to help us. And even though we're tiny, our motto is small enough to make a difference. And I think that's our objective, is like, can we be a template for a different way of doing things? And I was really inspired. I joined Climate Mayors after the train crash, which is a national group of mayors since our country had bowed out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Various cities in the United States made a choice to say, we're going to still support this in ways we can. And I think at that point was when mayors realized that we have a lot of power and autonomy to make those kinds of decisions. And it was sort of this, maybe for the first time in history, the collaboration of mayors that are like, let's share our resources. And my feeling was, if Chicago can make this commitment, then Mosier should certainly be able to, because we're a whole lot, it's a lot of less of a lift. So we've made, I think pretty outstanding commitments to try to up the ante and having our codes be reflective of progressive ways of dealing with energy consumption, which a lot of it is smart design, like insulation and using materials that are a little bit more user-friendly, earth-friendly. So yeah, and we have a council that's pretty much on board. And it's funny, we are a rural town and we're a little too rich to be poor and we're too poor to be rich. So often we're stuck right in this thing. And we have 2 full-time employees in our town, and that's it. So it's a lot on the council. And, fortunately, I've really engaged as mayor, but I would say it's, for me, like a half-time to full-time job for free, in this in capacity.
So, you talk about local control again with the league, home rule, local control, bringing it down, dealing with things at the federal level. You can let the federal government deal with that. And so it sounds like you really have embraced that and keeping those decisions within the city. Just to pivot a little bit, we've been through a rough year, and, you had your challenges with the derailment and everything, but then we had a rough, year and a half. How did your city fare? How did your citizens, your businesses, how did you deal with those challenges in the past year and a half?
Well, the very first thing that happened is, with our city council, we used to meet in what is the Mosier Senior Center. And of course, our seniors were way too vulnerable to have any outsiders come in because of COVID. So since really it's been a year and a half or 2 years, time's starting to kind of fly on this.
Yeah.
That we had virtual meetings. And, it's interesting because there's a lot about the virtual meetings that makes perfect sense. And I think we've even decided as a city, from the end of daylight savings time in the fall or the beginning of it, I never know which way is saving anything.
Yeah.
In these winter months, we're going to go virtual, even if there isn't a problem with COVID, because we've had to cancel so many meetings due to ice on the road or storms or somebody coming from Bend to do a presentation and they're stuck in a snowstorm. Or they're having to go back in horrible weather in the dark. So it's like, okay, if you can have this meeting from the comfort of your home and then be present. I think for all of us, we realized, okay, there's a lot less driving time, and it sort of takes some of the time that is just to the getting there and getting back and the resources that are spent. So that has been something. And, our office it's just going to open on next Monday for the first time in a year and a half to the public. So all of that, thank goodness, we're in a place with technology that we've been able to basically run the town virtually in a sense as well. Our businesses have, our main restaurant in town, they ended up just kind of by grace made huge outdoor seating a couple of years ago. So they really felt like that they couldn't handle capacity, and that was really a blessing. The problem now is they can't find enough people to work to open up in any more extended hours. Like, we're ready for them to be open. Besides, now they're open only Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 4 p.m. And it used to be open 6 days a week for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And they're like, hey, they're not people available to work. So that's something none of us were kind of expecting. That, and I think it's a universal problem. It's not just where we are, that it's hard to get people back into the workforce, and probably especially into some of the lower paying jobs and positions. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. But, in this time when we were hunkered down, we were able to apply for these grants. And so it was pretty cool. We got we got the funding for the plaza and the outdoor bathrooms, and we got also the funding for the EV charging station all during COVID. So I think it's had its own blessing. We're all ready to get to the other side of it. It's a long road.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And so now, as we're recording this, we're coming into summer. We're in summer. Tourism is something that is important to a lot of cities, and I'm sure it's important to Mosier. And you said a lot of, because what's been happening, some tourism has been pushed your way. Folks wanting to visit you over the summer, what can they expect in Mosier over the summer?
Well, we won't have our public restrooms built yet, alas, until next summer. And right now we are so worried about fires. Yeah. And in fact, just today, thank goodness, our county put a fireworks ban for the 4th of July countywide, and the city is following with that ban. And it seems like you can start a fire by sneezing if you're not careful right now. Yeah. So I think we're just really hoping and praying and asking and begging for whoever comes to our area to be super, super careful and respectful of what's going on. And in fact, like if a car has been on the freeway from Portland and they pull over where the grass is high on the side of the shoulder of the road, they can start a fire just from their hot engine. So those things are tough. And again, it's beyond the capacity of our communicating with the members of our innate community when we are a destination. And we have, of course, the scenic highway here that draws a lot of people to go to the Twin Tunnels by bicycle and also go in the cars. A lot of car commercials happen over in Rowena, and a lot of people come out just for a drive. So, we're getting set up, and this money that we've gotten recently, I feel will really help us, with the infrastructure we need to be able to welcome people.
Yeah, some unique challenges again. Excuse me, dealing with the fire. That's got to be, everybody's a little bit on edge with that, and you can't control what other people do. So I think that's a good kind of a call out to say, be mindful, be careful, especially if you're coming over and you don't relate that maybe when you do pull over, you could spark something. So I want to just give you a couple minutes as we close here, to just kind of sing the praises of Mosier and what's great about the area and the city that you love.
Well, I think Mosier is a real jewel. I call it the heart of the National Scenic Area. And we are a unique community full of pretty fascinating people from all walks of life and from all over the world. And so I think we're beautifully positioned. And I remember when I was looking for a place to live, I wanted to be close enough to a good domestic and international airport, but far enough. And we are that. And we're small enough, but we're big enough. And so we're all the enoughs. But what I would like to sing the praises of a little bit is the League of Oregon Cities right now, because especially I think because of COVID, the League has stepped into this role, and this is under the leadership of Mike Cully, to have these weekly meetings that are debriefings where we feel all of us are in the loop and getting information from the top level of the governor's office, from the top level of the fire marshals. And it has become an incredible resource. And I think it epitomizes what the League is really about, and had never sort of achieved that status of being this hub for information. And, the other arms of the League, like CIS, they are vitally important for little cities like ours to have that legal protection and that legal expertise and wisdom. So that was one of the reasons when I was asked and I made it through the application process to become a member of the board, because I really believe it's a phenomenal group, and it's so important for us to all be able to sit down together and work on our problems and appreciate our progresses together.
Well, those are kind words. It's great to have you on the board. I know that the League is very delighted to have you on the board. So with that, I think we'll wrap up our conversation. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here onto the podcast and to share your incredibly interesting backstory, and then all the wonderful things that you're doing in the city of Mosier. So once again, my guest has been Mayor Arlene Burns. Mayor Burns, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and stay cool.
Thanks for listening to this episode of City Focus. We will be talking with more mayors from across our state to hear their stories and how their communities are faring as we move forward into 2021 and beyond. If you're a mayor or city councilor from Oregon and would like to share your city's story on the podcast, send me an email at cityfocus@orcities.org.